Hello, good people of the internet. Welcome to Suzerain episode 8. And if you've missed previous episodes and want to catch up, then check out the playlist, which will be linked. If you don't know what Suzerain is, then episode 1 will probably give you the best overview, but effectively it's a political simulation game. I do lots of reading. I make decisions about a made-up country, which will probably not be very good decisions. Last time, we went to a funeral, we made a speech, and then we had a long briefing about the diplomatic situation. We were learning all about our neighbours, which probably makes sense to look at the regional map. We didn't actually make a decision about that, so maybe that'll come up soon. But yes, well, it's showing here that there is a diplomatic mission going on here. Anyway, but there were options, yeah, also one here, about which one we would want to, I don't know, improve the relations with, make a new trade deal with, which one maybe would help for an alliance against the impending doom coming from Runeberg. Anyway, after that, there's lots of news articles. Maybe we should just have a brief overview. I'll try and maybe just read the titles. Remus Holstrom criticizes Workers' Rights Bill. Energy Protection Act repeal process begins. They want to repeal it. Oh, that was me, because I said maybe we would allow people to go above 20%. I said maybe. Anyway, emergency in Anrica. Mayor announces what kind of an emergency? Emergency directive authorizing him to use security powers. Really? Anyway, sold on today, Alfonso Foundation, a beacon of charity. President rains the last farewell to Bernard Circus. Oh yeah, this was my funeral speech. What did they say? Show of compassion is what the country deserves at this period of uncertainty. Indicates that the divisions of the country might soon be healed. I mean, did we? Calling for an open market, repealing the EPA. Yes. So we kind of mentioned that. President attends funeral. What do they say? Many of them in tears, others leaned out windows over balcony railings to watch the procession. Addressing the skilled foreign worker gap. The inability to attract and retain foreign talent hinders Swordsland's potential for economic growth. Unrest continues, does it? Welfare issues of Narble. We need democracy? Sure. Controversy at the funeral was there. Holding identical black and white signs reading, "We are all Bernard Circus, we are all millennialists." And then they are reporting that the Red Youth members were denied entry by the direct orders of the president, which is true, in a way. But I don't know how they found that out. The same discrimination and division that led to the murder of Circus continued at his funeral. And again, people were denied respect because of their political ideology. Was it that, or was it just that they were going to, you know, they weren't invited? I don't know who was on the invite list, that's the problem. Energy tensions escalate in Rizia. Announced an energy deal. The largest energy corporation of the ATO member Lesbia announced an energy deal with Pales over the disputed sea gas field Aureus. Rizia, which has laid claims over these fields, is likely to see an escalation in tensions. Which and Rizia was talking about. That's why we were opening up the EPA for more than 20%. Because it was them who were possibly wanting to invest here. But we wouldn't let them go above 50%, would we? Anyway, that's kind of what's happening in the news. Whilst we're talking about those sorts of things, let's read the report about the Contanan Security Pact. CSP unveils comprehensive Iyotake plan for Rika's infrastructure. In a calculated effort to expand its geopolitical sway, the Contanan Security Pact, spearheaded by Vice Secretary Chairman that guy, has unveiled a colossal investment scheme aimed at revolutionizing Rika's infrastructure and education sectors as the continent of Rica emerges as a fresh battleground in the global tug of ideologies, an increasing number of revolutions embracing millennialism and Volkslandian socialism indicate a shifting landscape. Comprehensive plan lays out investments amounting to 150 billion KS over the next 5 years. Okay. Revamp the education sector in Rica. Where is Rica? They said the continent, but this isn't this continent because this is Macopa. It's like, it's the continent is like over here somewhere where actual Quintana is. We go to the codex and search for Rica. Nope, that's characters, history, locations. Situated on the continent of Quintana. Well, who knows then? Let's read the report about CPS and LUS protest in Estord. In Estord, the Communist Party of Swordsland and the Labour Union of Swordsland have begun to protest against Gasum. The protest, aimed at voicing concerns over Gasum's activities, has drawn significant attention. CPS and LUS have united their forces, adding to the intensity of the protest. The reaction of the Marble administration and Gasum to these protests is being closely watched. I see. In Avery, a detained young Swords member in Avery claimed that he has connections to the local government. We have been investigating the truth of the claims, but not able to find any further leads for now. Investigations about this case will be continuing. And this is confident. Confident? As in secret. Confident. Anyway, CPS and LUS picket lines. CPS and the LUS have set up a picket line in the city. The two organizations, after recently moving to the Gasum HQ in the city, are actively expressing the discontent. The situation is attracting attention with the impact on the city's daily functioning yet to be determined. The response to the local administration to this development is being keenly observed. The response is being keenly observed. Okay. And that's it for reports. I say that, there is a report here as well. Let's read this report. GNA is preparing the Green Bill with a focus on promoting sustainable industry practices, particularly in Grunny. Section 1 of the Act proposes strict regulations on industrial pollution and waste disposal. It suggests hefty fines for non-compliance with the collected revenue to be reinvested in environmental recovery projects. Sure. Another report. Repeal proposal for the Energy Protection Act of 1932. GNA of Sutherland gathered yesterday for a significant session where the proposal from Franz Richter of the People of Freedom and Justice Party and supported by the independent MP Mansoon Leek was put forth to repeal the Energy Protection Act of 1932. This act, as it currently stands, restricts foreign ownership of security-sensitive energy corporations to 20%. The proposal to repeal or modify this law has been a topic of debate in the Assembly, with proponents arguing for an open market approach and opponents advocating for the protection of Swordsland's critical industries from foreign influence. If the repeal successfully garners the requisite majority, it will then head to the Maroon Palace for final approval. Well, I wouldn't want it to be completely repealed, just increase the percentage from 20 to 50% or something. 49%. Okay. Let's ask. The Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act has been passed by the GNA. So I get to either push it through or veto it. The Swordsland Tourism Cultural Preservation Act aims to amplify the cultural allure and tourism viability of Borin, Ribéry, Lockhaven, and Rica and Benfey. GNA is calling a collective push to establish Swordsland as a global tourist destination and reduce the effects of recession. Section 1 focuses on the cultural elevation of these cities, identifying local food, drink, music, dance, architecture, and historical sites as unique. Setting propositions, this cultivation of cultural tourism is positioned as a catalyst for economic invigoration. Section 2 underscores the restoration and preservation of key landmarks in Lochhaven and Annarika. Currently, it proposes a comprehensive renovation of tourist infrastructure in Benfey to enrich the visitor experience and generate steady income for local communities. Section 2, subsection 1 further commits to the safeguarding and development of the caves of Antara in Ripari and the vineyards of Borin, recognizing their potential as tourism growth drivers. And that costs a government budget, which I would like to say this tourism stuff is not that important. I mean, it's good. It will maybe make the economy grow, but I don't think many people are going to come here if there's a war going on. So it depends how certain we are that war is coming. And also I've said that I want to get rid of my veto, and then I'm about to use it. Tourism and Cultural Preservation Act. Let's, I don't know, for now, let's just veto it. I do want to... Do you say heavily declining? Don't say heavily declining. Just because I didn't put money into it doesn't mean it declines. That's not fair. At no point has someone come along and said, our tourism industry is heavily declining if we don't do anything. Maintain the status quo. Whatever. Well, if you're going to take my decisions like that, then maybe I just won't make decisions anymore. Anyway, so we're talking to the Reform Committee. I came a little early to the meeting room before anybody showed up. We had scheduled a meeting to discuss the progress of the Reform Committee regarding the new constitution. I took a seat on the centre chair in a vacant meeting room, so I waited for them to show up. The reforms were slowly becoming the most significant expectation of my government. We would be changing Seoul's constitution of 29. Most people nowadays blame the constitution for the outstanding problems of the country. On the other hand, the reformers in the assembly had been getting louder about their demands. What I knew for sure was that I needed to do something about this encroaching chaos before it swallowed me. Meanwhile, Lucien Petronier had been leading the committee to prepare an initial draft of the constitutional amendments. I was intrigued to hear their results. There was a knock on the door. It was Lucien. Good afternoon, sir. Lucien arrived exactly on the hour mark again. His punctuality could be described as obsessive. Good afternoon. Took a seat on the table and took out a bunch of documents. Should begin the meeting as soon as Mrs. Morgner and Mr. Vice President arrives. We finally have some results from the Reform Committee. How does it look? What results? Well, do I not wait for them? The Reform Committee already drafted the amendments for the new constitution thanks to the help of the members. But the situation is still quite complicated politically. We'll go over the details in the meeting. Then they arrived. After a short chat, everybody sat down and took out their notes. It was going to be a long meeting. Great. There is a lot to talk about. The future of this process. Let us begin to tackle the points of contention. Our committee meetings were really fruitful, and we already started working on the constitutional draft together with the reformists. They demanded a little too much, but we've had success with Franz Richter to create a realistic draft that could potentially go through the Supreme Court. A little, they demanded to rewrite the whole constitution. Mr. Richter's deputy even suggested removing the term sword from the constitution completely. I also didn't like their theatrics, but the requests were definitely not outrageous. They were just not realistic in today's political circumstances. Unless thanks to for your convincing arguments, we seem to have reached a common ground already. If we can fully reach an argument with the reformers, we will be strong in the Assembly to propose the change. Can we reach 2/3 majority in the Assembly? If you can get Franz Richter to work with you on this, our only problem would be uniting our own party. We'll never be able to get the NFP to work with us. We need a majority of 130 in the Assembly to vote in favour. With the PFJP's full support of 70 votes, we will easily pass the needed 166. But it will be tough to unite USB with all the divisive wings that has formed. You must make them follow you loyally. Did it before the actions, we can do it again. We will convince the leads. Alban Clavin and his reformist wing would be supporting you. He already weighed in heavily in the committee meetings. However, the Conservatives would be tough to break. The influence of Sol is still living strong in the party. We will eventually remove his influence. How many votes do they have? 40 seats. There are many unaligned people, and some of your loyalists might decide to show their true faces too. So we need as many of the Conservatives to support us, and there is only one person who is key to make them back us. Gloria Tory. She's well respected by the Solists. She'll be our biggest obstacle in the Assembly, and her demands will be extensive. Also have reason to think she might be in Orso's pocket. She'll be tough to break, but we'll need her help to get the Conservative support. Is it possible to pass the Supreme Court? They're the biggest obstacle. Even if we pass the Assembly, the Chief Justice will do his best to block our amendments. We need at least 6 of the 11 judges to vote for the proposal, but Mr. Hawker has enormous influence over the judges. We should reach out to the judges in secret. Some of them might be willing to break rank to support us. I was going to say they will surely support a just cause for the country and its future, but maybe not. I mean, I want to say it as a joke, you know? Yeah, he looks skeptical. Anyway, according to the Constitution, I'm a member of the Supreme Court, which means we already have 1 vote. 2 of the judges are friends of mine and of similar opinion about the reforms. Consider them with me. So we have 11. I mean, 3 of 11. The rest, we're not going to bribe them. Who else would be willing to support the reforms? I think Judge Edmonds can be persuaded, and in extension, Mr. Dalton and Mr. Merton. They weren't really blinded by the Solist ideology. Yes, those 3 don't seem to be working directly with the Chief Justice. If we can get to Edmonds, we might get the 6 votes needed. That's our best bet. What are the demands? Let's go through the draft. Go through each of the main demands of the committee and get your input. Ms. Morgana can explain them further. We'll start with the first red line. The new constitution will fix the loopholes regarding the president's absolute veto powers. Even though I just used one. Even though Mr. Richter put on a whole show about why vetoes should be completely removed, the committee has almost unanimously agreed on fixing the loopholes, thus limiting presidential vetoes. VTOs. My suggestion is to add a clause detailing the methods the Assembly may override a veto with some sort of supermajority. One person should never be able to block the rest. I stand in agreement with Mr. Richter that vetoes should be removed. Loopholes give the president too much power. Fixing the loopholes. I mean, we should remove the vetoes, right? But the committee has unanimously agreed on fixing the loopholes. So if we just say that, that's the middle one. Whatever you decide, it's important to get a balanced picture. We'll be making history by changing the 29 Constitution. Second one is about the judiciary. The new Constitution will remove the Supreme Court's right to vote on legislation. This is yet another point that was unanimously agreed on by all parties. Tarquin Sol established this rule to protect his 29 Constitution. We all know most of the judges are still his pawns. Constitutional amendments will still be very difficult to accomplish with a reform like this, but particularly because we will keep the 2/3 vote system to be able to propose a change. However, the judiciary will not have the final say in the amendments. This is already what we want to do. Can't disagree with that. We need the court to even pass this change. Why would they support this? The same reason why I would pass a thing about getting rid of my veto. It's just like, this is already what we wanted to do. It's kind of true, but let's just say this. Most of them won't, but we already talked about my vote and possible agreement with this as well, yeah. Apart from these two critical points, they have other major demands. They want to reform the appointment procedures of ministers. Mr. Richter clarified that the Assembly should have a say in the formation of the Council of Ministers, something that the majority of our party also supports. While Mr. Richter also talked about abolishing the member of honour rights of Tarquin Sol, that gives him absolute immunity and makes him a permanent member of the Assembly. That one is controversial. I doubt the ESP would like that. Immunity of the justices, the impeachment of the president, limiting the power of the presidential decrees. All of this came up during the committee meetings. Yes, reformers expect big reforms, while our faction in the ESP are not very keen on pushing changes that are too great. So keeping everything in the middle ground is the safest bet. No need to agitate anyone too much. So immunity of, are these the things that they're all pushing for? I mean, we want to make reformations, but we kind of maybe have to go in baby steps sometimes. I'd like to do all the things. Keeping everything in the middle ground is the safest bet. What does he think? What if it came up? Just whatever the people in the committee came up with, that'll do. They have valid concerns that we need to look at. It depends what the changes are, right? Like, is it including all of these things? Or like just the two main points? So we're talking like the two main points plus all these things, or just the two main points and then not all these things. As long as we address the main issues, yeah, okay. I think that's what I'm saying. Regardless of what Mr. Rain decides, we will need to work together to push this agenda. Now we have a better picture of your intentions, sir. I will start reaching out to my contacts to make a draft that works for us. I'll present your input to the committee in a few months. You would have a draft on your desk to make the final changes yourself. I think this was yet another fruitful meeting. Your service is appreciated. If we do this, we'll be remembered as heroes. Together we will democratize Swordland. Thanks for the meeting. Let's just go with your service is appreciated. Thank you for the kind words. You can count on us. I think this is what we can call it. Have a good day. They left the room. Okay. So there's more things that we can read. Incident at President Sol's mansion. A private boat nearing the mansion prompted the Coast Guard to fire warning shots. Despite the initial alarm, former president allowed the boat to approach for a brief conversation. The occurrence has raised questions about the security protocols near the obscure mansion. Details of the conversation remain undisclosed. That is strange. Like, someone coming up. That's just someone wanting to talk to the old president. H3 construction plan started by Taurus has reported the preparatory work for H3 highways has already started, including clearing land and demolishing buildings in the path of future roadway construction. The highway will be starting in the next months, working west from Lockhaven. Good to know. Nature preservation protest. The Nature Preservation Foundation is protesting against the remaining coal industry, a significant contributor to Swedish energy. The group is voicing concern about the environmental impact of the industry. The protest is gaining momentum and drawing attention to the need for sustainable energy alternatives. The future of coal industry operations in Morgul is uncertain. And then we can have a meeting with the Chief Justice, which we will do in a second, but let's just check the news. Minister Manja's rural development vision unveiled an ambitious investment plan concept aimed at revitalizing Swordsland's rural economies and ensuring food sustainability. Cool. Cooperation with Rumberg, an economic imperative. Amidst ongoing geopolitical uncertainties, there's an economic imperative that we can't ignore the potential of our northern neighbor, Rumberg, known for its large energy economy and access to two leading energy corporations, ripe for collaboration. These energy giants are not just the possibility of the wealth generation, but also a means of diplomatic softening, aligning mutual interests to avoid future conflicts. Joffrey sparks fear for Gaston's financial stability. WPB protest electoral bill. Growing discontent over the past electoral campaign finance bill. Fine. TCPA vetoed by Rain, a missed opportunity. I just didn't want to use the budget. Anyway. And also, it shouldn't be a big red statement. Again, it should just be a is declining. Unless the bill had said it is already heavily declining, which it didn't. Anyway, global perspective, the Iotaki plan, an ambitious investment scheme to revolutionize recusum. Yep, read this stuff earlier. While it demonstrates the CSP's commitment to sustainable development, its reception underscores the complexity of international politics. Yes, so complex, it makes, very little sense as to whatever we're doing. Let's talk to the Chief Justice. So we just had the meeting about changing the Supreme Court. Now this is the leader of the Supreme Court. The administration had been working day and night on the overwhelming amount of issues that were facing the country. The department sent several documents which required my signature so they could start working on new decisions that were taken. After I signed dozens of them, I closed my eyes to relax for a moment. Another long day, even though I had really wished to leave the palace for the day. Lucian had earlier told me that Chief Justice wanted to speak to me. He planned to meet in my office in 30 minutes. I waited for him, wondering what the subject he would raise. Take a moment to relax, because I need my wits about me. I don't need to drink whiskey. Looked out the window, shimmering lights of Holsworth skyline were mesmerizing. Suddenly I heard a knock on the door. It was Lucian. Good evening, Lucian. Sorry that I couldn't explain the situation to you in detail earlier. Chief Justice insisted on seeing you this evening. I do not know what he has to say, but it will probably be about the new constitution. He'll be coming shortly with Judge Mr. Garassi. I don't know. To the meeting, we shouldn't take them lightly. I think he's here to test waters. They're here to threaten us to stop the reforms. May be able to cooperate with them. We knew they would react at some point. We should. There were 3 knocks at the door. Lucian checked his watch. He looked rather worried. Livia opened the doors. Chief Justice Orso Hawker and Judge Heron Garassi entered the room. It's great to see you, Mr. President. Evening. They said it's great to see you. I could say it's good to see you. Or use their names. Yes, let's use their names. Good to see you. Also gestured at the sofa in the office. May I sit down? Yeah, I can say please. Please sit down. We all took our seats on two opposite sofas and made ourselves comfortable. How were your first couple of months, Mr. President? Hope you're faring well. Been very busy, but I'm doing good. Doing well. No need for pleasantries. Yeah, let's just say very good. It will only get busier. Yeah, I think you're doing a good job so far, considering all that's happening around us with the shootings in the past and soldiers on our borders. Hear that out of deep sigh. It's a troubling time. We appreciate your concerns. So, you probably know why we are here. Please enlighten us. We know you are working on a new constitution. The Supreme Court does not approve of this. With all due respect, the constitution needs to be updated, sir. I'm sure you're well aware of the public demand in our circumstances. Is that so? I see that you're the one who is not aware of our actual circumstances. You want to make a weaker constitution in the midst of problems from both inside and outside. Even if your proposal passes the Assembly, I'll make sure that it will not pass the Supreme Court. That much is clear. You haven't even seen the proposal yet. Mr. Hawker, isn't it too soon to be against it? Come, Mr. Hawker, we can figure something out. We'll get the court too, even if you do not cooperate. Let's just say the logical thing. You haven't even seen it yet. Do you think I live under a rock? I know what goes on. Yet you, Mr. President, seem to be the only partially informed about the current situation. Please let us explain the reasons for our stance. So I can say I'm fully informed. That's a bit arrogant. I don't care is even more. So just be polite. Please explain. We're protecting the Constitution because it works, Mr. President. It is efficient and it gives you the authority to lead the nation with swift decisions. Sworden has more important problems and threats that we should face right now. Instead of nitpicking about some paragraphs of the Constitution, we have potential war within our borders. Also signalled Heron with his hand to let him speak instead. I know you're a busy man, so I'll make this quick. We all know that Swedish security forces found stashes of Rumbergian weapons in the hideouts of Bloodish separatists roaming inside Sworden at this time. As much as Rumberg poses a direct threat now, it's clear that they are also intervening in our country and weaponizing our minorities against us. It's not unprecedented to think that the Bloods will start their terror again with their new toys. Not to mention the fights that broke out between the left and the right wing after the shooting of Bernard Circus. Communists are rising with the support of United Quintana. The chaos is imminent for Swordland. And sadly, we don't see the administration taking the necessary precautions. You said you will not focus on military during your term. Under current circumstances, that cannot be tolerated at any cost. Mr. Hawker, the court has no jurisdiction over these matters. We are taking the necessary steps, no to worry. I did promise that, but the circumstances have changed. Toy, you should be more careful with your words of choice. Did he use what? You said that you will not focus on military during the current circumstances that cannot be tolerated. We're taking the necessary steps. I guess so. It's either the top two, right? It's like, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to focus on military, but I'll just say they have no jurisdiction. I mean, but they're allowed to voice the concerns, so we'll just say we're taking necessary steps. We hope that our police forces and our militaries are adequately funded during these times of conflict. But regardless of that, are you also aware that the armed bloodish separatists have direct connections with the Workers' Party of Oblidia, which is a political party, garnered support from the Berger region, aspiring to fundamentally challenge the existing Swordist-Bloodish divide and other existing parameters in the Swordist politics. Despite their name, they claim to be a political party representing the whole region of Berger and want to represent all of Swordland regardless of ethnic backgrounds. But what do they want? An independent region? Or, I don't know. So what are they saying? Armed Bloodish separatists have direct connections. Generally left-wing. Strong emphasis on participatory democracy, unions, minority rights, and egalitarianism. Some members of the USP have claimed that the WPB has direct ties with the BFF, which was not proven and have been numerously denied by its members. In 1949, the party put forward its earlier chairman, who won 6% of the vote. He then resigned from the party and ran as an independent to bypass the 10% election threshold. In 1953 elections, the party won 9% of the vote, barely losing the elections this time, despite concerns that the departure of Lurk may result in lower votes. So, have direct connections. They claim otherwise. Let's just say they claim otherwise, because that's what it said in the codex. They may claim they have no ties with separatists, but most of the members used to be part of them before they formed the WFB. About the name, it is not the Workers' Party of Swordland, is it? As far as I'm aware, there's no nation called Oblidia around here. What is this all about? The only reason they are not in the assembly is because of the electoral threshold. They've gone quite big. They are clearly getting outside help, and their connections to the paramilitary Bloodish force cannot be denied. And all of a sudden, the reformists are trying to decrease the electoral threshold so that the Bloodish separatists can be legitimized in the assembly to achieve their aims of independence. You think that's Mr. Richter's intentions are not allowed to happen? That's too dramatic. I suspect his intentions are grander, but I wish the only issues were the Bloodish terrorists of Amrenburg. The reformers suggested changes would also bring the communists, who are backed by United Quintana, into the assembly. Do you see the pattern yet? I mean, the reformers aren't completely socialists. Anyway, do I see a pattern? You're saying the reformers are working for foreign powers? There is no evidence about any of this. Changes would also bring the communists into the assembly, which haven't you been briefed by your security team? Maybe you should suspect them as well. We should take the necessary measures against the communist and British plots, as well as increasing our military budget against a possible conflict with Rumburg. And of course, not fall into the traps of the reformists by listening to their demands. They're clearly plotting to weaken the president and our whole administration in order to exploit the situation. Which brings us to some very important information that we have. It's definitely something that you need to hear, and it can change absolutely everything. With all due respect, Mr. President, I think this is getting slightly ridiculous. I can just say you're right. I don't think anything will come about it. That's fine. I can let them explain. I'm not going to actually do anything about it. I just want to hear what they have to say. person in question is Mr. Franz Richter himself, the leader of the reformists. We have enough information to infer that he has ties with Arcasia, which I don't have any problem with. Arcasia is aggressively growing their influence around the world, and now we have Mr. Richter coming up with these ridiculous demands for a new constitution amid chaotic period in Swordland. All the pieces seem to fit perfectly. This is why the Supreme Court will be doing what it takes to stop these reforms and preserve the constitution. How would you know that Mr. Richter has ties to Arcasia? Mr. Gallard, we all know he has been in Arcasia many times because it has been documented. But what would you think if he has been making hidden flights to the country? He was hiding his flights. He was. He has been spotted in a hotel in Arcasia last year where they held the conference on economic development in volatile regions. That's fine. He went to the conference. Right around that time, he started to influence the masses into believing that our constitution is the reason for everything bad. His trip was not documented, nor was he an official guest at the conference. We believe that he had a meeting with President Walker behind closed doors. I also have a couple of more photos of him that were taken in Arcasia in different cities. One is from a couple months back. Again, none of it is documented. He also attended another event in Lesbia last week. The Arcasian Minister of Foreign Affairs was there too. How can any of these be undocumented? We don't know. Even if he used a private plane, we would be able to get the information of the flights. That means he has people helping them from the inside. Many Solace were already following his leads for quite some time. I cannot give away their identities, but I can give you the evidence. He handed me a small file. Contain official documents from the Swordish border guard with highlighted dates that showed no trace of Franz Richter's name. There were clear photos of him that were taken in the conference in Arcasia, as well as remarks by Lesbian and Arcasian citizens who claim to have seen him with Arcasian businessmen around the same dates. There was also an official transcript, one of the speeches where he claimed to be in Benfi, but the dates of the conference in Arcasia, on the dates where he was spotted. Lucian skimmed through the documents with skepticism, which slowly turned to surprise. These seem to be real. Of course they are. These seem to suggest that Arcasia is behind the reformists. The demands will only benefit Arcasia. They want us to have a weaker administration while we face all these threats. Clearly a plot against Swordland and Betrenberg is part of their plan too. This cannot be a coincidence that they're weaponizing our minorities against us around the same time. Now you understand the reasons of our current stance, and also our suspicions about your advisors who clearly have not given you all this vital information. Lucian gave him a sharp look. We appreciate the information, but advise against jumping to conclusions right away. We still need to check the information. Not much to think or check. This is clearly an emergency. In such cases, the Constitution gives the President the right to use his emergency powers. If we work together, you can be sure the Supreme Court will not block your declaration of emergency. I'm still too skeptical. Yes. I'll just ask the question. Of course, we cannot wait for the processes of the Assembly to take care of these issues. You must exercise your presidential powers for a fast and effective solution, which means you might need to suspend parts of the Constitution to give more authority to our security forces to deal with these issues. We must especially investigate Mr. Richter as well. You can devise a strong security decree if you can base it on Articles 57 and 58. Give the President the right to suspend parts of the Constitution to deal with national security threats. You can directly bypass the Assembly in such a situation. The only thing you need is the Supreme Court to allow the emergency to be declared, and you have our word on that. So I think that's going a bit too far. We shouldn't escalate things so fast. Why don't we talk in private? Only two of us. We can devise a plan together. I know we can use the Constitution to our advantage. It would be more effective if Gallard and Grassi leave the room before we discuss it. Sorry to say that we won't be cooperating. Regardless of our situation, I'll be proceeding with the reforms. So, I mean, I don't want to go with an emergency situation. So I don't want to plan it together. Let's just say that we won't be cooperating. Even though you're aware of our national security threats, you're making a big mistake, we're not allowing you to succeed. And I can either put it back on them, say enough, and then or I can just say, I think it's about time to end this meeting. Thank you for having us. Have a good evening. They both left the room without saying anything else. That was not good. They clearly tried to threaten you. So we can try and take care of them. We have to make sure our reforms will pass the court. How dare they talk to me like that? I just say I'm not scared of them. I mean, I, again, want to say multiple things. Take care of them in what way? Like to get them on our side? They're clearly not going to be on our side. We have to make sure our reforms will pass the court. I'll just say I'm not scared of them. Also, we'll be doing whatever it takes to damage you. We need to be careful. There are still many old guard sympathizers in our party. We can't let them divide our party. He will definitely try. After a short evaluation of the situation on our hands, Lucien left me in the presidential office. It was obvious that the old guards would be my main rivals in the near future. I see. And we have a big continue button, which, as it has just saved, we're going to cut here for this episode. I want to thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a like. It will definitely encourage me to do more of these. If people are watching them, I'll keep creating them. If no one does, then maybe I won't. Please subscribe if you're enjoying it and want to see other stuff like this on the channel. And yes, thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a great day.